The Apothecary Diaries anime is another series that also took everyone by surprise, including myself. I didn't really think too much of this series when I was watching it at first, but as the episodes went by, it really became a series that was worth watching. Just like Frieren, it has now become one of the most memorable animes, and with its announcement that season 2 is going to be coming in 2025, it's very clear that the popularity has been clearly shown. Now, there's a lot of reasons as to why this series is so great, but of course, many people point out that the reason what makes this series all the more special is of course its main character, this being Maomao. Maomao is a very great protagonist, and every scene that she's in, she always steals the spotlight, whether it's showing her intelligence or just showing the kind of person that she is. It's always something that makes Maomao great to see. And even though this series is considered a mystery series, because throughout the entirety of this series we see Maomao trying to solve mysteries that are happening around her, and it also has its comedic moments, there's also something that is also worth talking about, and that is the dark reality in the world of the Apothecary Diaries. Even though this is a work of fiction, and even though most likely all these characters are not real, the history of Imperial China is clearly shown in this anime. It's very obvious that this series takes place in Imperial China, and it shows us the culture and the many events that happened during this time period, and some of them were not pretty, most specifically how women were treated in this time period and what they were seen as. Now, sometimes the series is very subtle about this, but sometimes they are very obvious as what they're trying to say or show that history isn't always going to be pretty, and that there's some things that happened during our history that sometimes you look back to and you wonder what was going on and why was this okay. And that's what the Apothecary Diaries shows us with the concubines that many women were turning into during Imperial China. And while for some during this time may have been seen as something great, because not only are you going to have a very stable lifestyle, but if you happen to bear a son with the emperor, then not only does your status increase, but that child could also be the one that could take the throne in the future. It's something that at first seems great, but in reality it has its own negatives as well. And something that Mama explains very perfectly is that while these type of women may be seen as people who have a lot of privileges, that may not be the case, as even though they do have a different lifestyle compared to the women in this time period, they clearly still have sets and boundaries that they have to do. They clearly can't just do whatever they want, and they have limits as to what they can and cannot do, as this can not only affect their image, but at any time their status as somebody important may be instantly taken away from them, and someone else will just come and replace them as a whole, which is a very unfortunate thing that was happening in this part of history, because it just seems that women were just treated as materials rather than actual people. And no one knows this better than Maomao herself, the main protagonist, because all throughout her life, she has seen how women had been treated and what women had to do to treat the men, not just with important and powerful people, but also just simply normal everyday people as well. And this has become even more clear when you come to realize that a good portion of Maomao's life was basically living in a brothel. She has seen many of these kind of things, so for her this lifestyle is not a really huge surprise, but it's not a lifestyle that she wants to be a part of, as the thing that Mama loves the most is of course making medicine, collecting herbs, and testing out different kinds of poison. That is the lifestyle that Mama wants to have, and to show just how far she was willing to make sure that she was free and didn't have to live this lifestyle, Mama made sure that she didn't seem attractive whatsoever. She made herself be unattractive on purpose, and this becomes more obvious when you come to find out that the freckles that she has on her face aren't actual freckles, they're fake, and the only reason why she has them to begin with is because she doesn't want to be seen as attractive, so that she may possibly become somebody that has to work at a brothel or become a concubine in the future. But of course that doesn't work out well, as very quickly we see that despite her best efforts, she will end up getting kidnapped by a group of people and then being sold as a servant to the emperor's palace, which showcased just how vulnerable many of the women were, because it seemed that no matter what, whether you were attracted or not, many women would end up having to do a lifestyle that they were either forced to do it or had to do it because it was beyond their control. And even though Mama was forced to turn into a servant for the emperor's palace, it would be this setting that would change her life completely, as once she comes to realize that many of the concubines for the emperor are falling ill, she would use her knowledge of medicine and herbs to try to find out what is making them ill and if there is a cure for it. And once she's able to successfully save them, she gets promoted from servant to a poison tester. But despite her change of status, Maomao still wants to be her very own person. She still doesn't want to be controlled and wants to make her own choices and do the things that she wants to do. And it's not like she is keeping all these thoughts and emotions to herself. No, she's very open about it. And there are many moments in this series that if she feels something is wrong or somebody is doing something that's not right, she will stand her ground and say what she has to say or do what she has to do, regardless of who the person is or the status that they have. But despite her strong personality, Mama doesn't know everything. She still has flaws. She's not an expert on everything that is happening. And it's very obvious when she learns new things as the series goes by. And that's a very good balance to her character, as even though she does speak her mind from time to time, she doesn't know everything. And that's perfectly fine because anybody, no matter who you are, isn't always going to have the answers to all the questions about life. And this ties into her relationship with another character, Jinshi, as even though these two characters have good chemistry, it's very obvious that they both don't know a lot about each other, especially with Jinshi, as even though he is seen as a very attractive person and somebody that is completely perfect and has everything that anybody could ever ask for, he also has his own flaws. And this also becomes clear when he doesn't know the full extent of the many struggles that women like Maomao have to deal with. And of course, that's not his fault. It's just something that never really occurred to him to think about it deeply, because once again, this kind of lifestyle was not something that a lot of people saw any issues with or didn't see the full extent of just how bad it was. But when Jinshi finds out that the freckles that Maomao has on her face are fake and the reason why she has them is to keep herself safe and not be a target of people having malicious intent towards her, this is where we see that Jinshi feels really sad about that and feels really bad at the fact that Maomao has to go to all these lengths just to keep herself safe. And he also learns that unlike the concubines for the emperor, in which those people are only for the emperor themselves, there is another group of women that are also known as a courtesan, in which these women have a high ranking status, and it seems that the only people that can be with them is of course powerful people who have a lot of money and can afford them. And he comes to find out that when he asks Maomao what is the way that these kind of women can lose their status as a courtesan significantly, Maomao clearly shows that she knows the answer, but it's a very disturbing answer, as she tells Jinshi that the only way a courtesan can lose her status completely is if she becomes pregnant, which is something that shocks Jinshi. But at the same time, we also see that Mama knows more, and it seems that she may have a clear idea as to what that's like, and it will be revealed later on that that's because Mama herself experienced this kind of thing in her past. We come to find out very late into the series about Maomao's parents, and at first the series does a good job making us believe that Maomao's father, who goes by the name of Lokon, sorry if I butchered it, my apologies, but the series at first made us believe that he was some sort of evil person that has some sort of evil past with Maomao, as very quickly we see that every time his name is mentioned to Maomao, she is very quick to showcase how much she doesn't seem to be a huge fan of him and doesn't like him whatsoever. But when we get to the past of Maomao's parents, we will come to find out that Lokon is also a tragic character as well. We will come to find out that Maomao's father never really was able to form deep connections with people, and in fact he couldn't even see people's faces because all he saw was like pieces of a game in which he just viewed people as nothing but pieces that he had to move, and he was very good at making sure that he was making the people around him useful to him. But that all completely changed once he met Maomao's mother, a woman who goes by the name of Feng Xian. Again, sorry if I mispronounced it, but anyways, this would be Maomao's mother. And after spending more time with each other, the two would really start to get close. Now, in the back of Maomao's mother's head, she knew that due to her status of her being a high courtesan, Lakan wasn't going to be able to afford her, and most likely somebody else with a higher status and more money would be able to afford her. So, as a result of this, there was a plan to be made. Mama's mother knew the probability that if she were to get pregnant, her status would lower, but she hoped that because of that, Lachlan would be able to afford her and then they would both end up together. But sadly that didn't happen, as Lachlan would be forced to go study abroad, and it would be 3 years of him having no contact with her whatsoever. During these 3 years, not only did her high status of a courtesan drop significantly because of her pregnancy with Lachlan, but she also sadly contracted a disease that made her look very ill, and of course her appearance and her beauty dropped significantly as well. And during this time period, Mama's mother felt abandoned, and she felt that she did all this for nothing, for a man who didn't seem to be interested in her whatsoever. But that was not the case, as once Mama's father comes back from studying from abroad, he realized that there's so many letters that were sent to him by the woman he loved. However, one thing that piqued his interest and was actually a very dark moment was when he reaches a bag that was also sent to him, and in that bag it seemed to have been a finger, but also a tiny one as well. And this is where Lachlan realizes that not only did she cut her finger, but she also cut the tip of a small finger as well. And the disturbing reality was that this small finger, or this small part of a finger, belonged to Maomao. Realizing what has happened, Lachlan tried to look for her, but to no avail. It wouldn't be until years later when he would realize that she was still alive. And while he would reunite with her towards the end, this was still a very dark moment, as it goes to show us the many things that these women would have to go through and what would happen to them once they lost their high status as a courtesan. Mama's mother is a perfect case as to how someone who had everything apparently lost everything in a matter of seconds, and how her mental state declined as well, not just her physical one, and she decided to take her anger and frustration towards not just herself but to her child as well. And even though Maomao could have had a deep hatred towards her mother, she still, in many moments, it's shown that Maomao was still taking care of her mother and knew that her mother was still around and was still treating her sickness, taking care of her from time to time. It really does show us how much of a strong person Maomao is, because despite everything that happened between them, she still took care of her. And even though she doesn't really see her mother, as she views other people in her life as the people that she is truly grateful, as these people were able to raise her and treat her very well, there is a tiny part of her that is still grateful towards her mother, because if she hadn't been born, she wouldn't have met all the amazing people that she has met throughout her life. It's this moment in this series that really captured just really the struggles that many women who were concubine over a courtesan can have to deal with. They have to deal with this pressure of making sure that their status is high, or else if they were to do something that could damage it, they could lose everything and somebody else would just be there to replace them. And how sadly, if one of these girls were to be pregnant, their status would lower significantly, and that is very messed up considering the fact that these are people. But once again, this lifestyle in this era was very different compared to today, and how women were seen more as a valuable item than just normal human beings who also had their lives and who also had dreams and goals and things that they wanted to do, but they just couldn't because they had to have a specific lifestyle, or were forced in a lifestyle that they probably didn't want to be in, just to keep moving on in life. And even though we can't change what happened in history, it's important to reflect what was happening during these time periods and just become better people. And I'm glad that that's happening in today's era, where these kind of lifestyles don't really exist anymore, and women are able to be free and independent and do their own things without any consequences whatsoever. But it is still unfortunate that this still had to happen in society, and how back then this was not seen as a problem, and it was just simply something that was normal and was something that people got used to seeing. And it's probably one of the reasons what made this anime stand out. It wasn't just the comedic moments or the moments with Maomao just being intelligent and solving solving mysteries that were around her. It was also the realism that also made this anime very powerful. And despite this series being a work of fiction, that didn't mean that they didn't have some things that happened in real life as well. And I know for some people, they tend to not always want to see reality in fiction, but sometimes it's important to showcase this so that people don't become ignorant or pretend that this kind of thing never happened in real life, because it did. It's something that has happened, and the struggles that some group of people had to go through during this time. And overall, the Apothecary Diaries is a very well made anime that I look forward to seeing more in the near future. And with the announcement of season 2, then I'm very excited to see what's to come with Maomao and the rest of the other characters in this series, because it's very clear that there's more to come with this series, and I'm really looking forward to that. So yeah, that's pretty much my entire video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time.